Hello there. Good morning and afternoon, as where in the world you may be. And welcome to episode 104 of the Unifying Force. How are you doing this afternoon there, Gio?
I'm doing well, thank you. I like to do a quick weather report every time, and London is having a bit of a mild spell after a week and a half of constant off and on rain. We still have that phenomenon of you layer up for the cold, and then you go into a shop and you overheat, or you go on the train or the tube and you just cook like sardines in a can. So there's that, but things are okay. And
is here on the East Coast of the U.S. is we are due to have the coldest feels like temperatures, the coldest wind chills and things this evening and into tomorrow morning that we have had to date this season. So,
oh wow,
bundle up the people. It will be temperatures in the single digits. Yeah.
So for Fahrenheit, single digits must be minus.
I don't know what it translates to as Celsius is. I would imagine, yes, it would be because we are below our freezing point. So it's got to be minus in Celsius because 0 degrees Celsius would be your freezing point where ours is 32. So yeah, bound to be in the minuses. But we're having an unusually kind of snowy. We've had here in North Carolina where we don't often get a lot of snow. We've had 3 different kind of snowy events already, though it hasn't amounted to much really on real standards. But it's happened. But anyway, so we started our discussion. Kat may join us as we go on, but she may not. So we're just going to kind of go. We started our discussion last time 2 weeks ago on anime and kind of some very important animes throughout the history of the West, at least. We don't really have a good bead on all of the important animes and that have occurred in the East and in Japan in particular. But these are kind of some of the ones that have made their way westward, and the goal of that is all to get to Vision season 3 and all of those kind of influences of that anime toward that. So we're going to kind of do a little bit of a recapping. Let's take a look at his slide on over here to our slide deck. And last time, like I said, there's a lot of anime. Look at all of this stuff out here, and we're not even mentioning everything that's on this page. But last time we took a good look at, Pokemon and Princess Mononoke. Say it.
Princess Mononoke.
Princess Mononoke. There we go. All sorts of things. Howl's Moving Castle, My Neighbor Totoro, and the Dragon Ball Z. Just going through some huge things that have been there. One Piece, which is, absolutely one of the biggest animes on the planet right now. You go to Comic-Con, our friend Sherry was just at GalaxyCon Columbus and just said that the lines for people who have done anything in anime are just ridiculous and really even overshadow for a lot of those actors who have done non-anime roles or who might even be live action non-voice actors, but just their anime fandom is humongous.
Yeah, I
And
think
we ended our discussion with a little bit of a Star Wars tie-in, right? Because this is of course the voice of Zeb from Star Wars Rebels is the star of Cowboy Bebop, um, and like a really kind of influential and kind of fun thing. So we're going to kind of go a little bit further back. Right now, we've kind of hit a lot of what Geo's takes on important animes were, and I don't disagree. Just a number of them, like I was not as familiar with, but I've been watching. I've been watching TV a lot longer than Geo there. When I was watching these shows, Geo not so much existing on the planet. Um, but some of my favorite animes from the late 70s and the early 80s are what's coming up next. So let's get into it and let's talk a little bit about those and those kind of influences. Is
Yeah, I'll have the questions and you have the
Oh,
answers.
absolutely. Please have questions and I will be happy to answer if I do know the answer. So here's my first exposure to anime. This is what occurred and what happened, like, I'm watching this in the late 70s, the early 80s, kind of like, you've got cartoons that come on during the day. I think this, and I'm watching them like, when I'm home from school on breaks, or this might have been some that even kind of occurred before I started primary school. But this is
Mm,
Star Blazers, right? And as you can see, it's a little bit kind of wacky in there. Is the premise here being that the Earth is going to war with this alien species, right? And to fight, and they've got help from this other alien species to bump us up on the technology. So kind of really like a,
mm,
a, a 70s kind of thematically deal. And so they resurrect the World War II battleship Yamato, and and it becomes a starship, and they're
mm.
journeying through space, and you have like little ships that come out of the ship. This is very Battlestar Galactica, very much so, that kind of thing. And you've got your big primary weapon that they fire. It's a formulaic show. It reminds me of what came to later versions of the Battlestar Galactica, like show, live action show. This reminds me a lot of foundations of Voltron, foundations of Power Rangers. Is that kind of thing coming out of it? And you can see it's a very Voltron, like original Lion Voltron style of animation. So I mean,
Yeah.
really, really cool show. This was an English dub of a show directly from Japan. I think they called it the Space Battleship Yamato in Japan. They didn't call it
Mhm.
Star Blazers. Um,
Yeah.
and you know, this had been done a while. It was resurrected a couple of times in Japan. I think they tried to resurrect it, and I'm not sure if it was at a cartoon or as a live action. And they tried to resurrect this, but to make it more American, is they were resurrecting and using the battleship Arizona as their mains, and it just didn't work. It wasn't a thing. Anime is supposed to be Japanesey in a good way.
Yeah, it's a huge part of it. We discussed the definitions and the etymology of things like anime and manga last time, which was fun.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, so
Anime,
go back and check out, and I will try and put in the description the link to part one.
mm,
But always you can go to our playlist on YouTube, is youtube.com/the virtual cantina network, and you can find the Unifying Force playlist, and all 104 episodes are there in order,
mhm.
so check them out.
Yeah, we created a lot of free entertainment over the last 4 years,
Indeed.
and please go back and check it out. It's you can listen to it along because our show is a discussion show. We go in depth, we make jokes. It's kind of like a podcast format, so you don't have to be watching us 100% of the time. You can have us on in the background, white noise. We won't mind. We won't
But
know.
you would miss the lovely visuals of, like, stuff like Star Blazers. It's still,
That's true.
to
That's
me,
true.
is extraordinarily striking, just this kind of style of animation. Anyway,
It
from
is.
Star Blazers, we mentioned
Ooh,
last time
I
is.
had a question. I had a
Oh, what is
question
your
actually.
question?
So I looked up that it debuted in 1979 and ran until 1984. Did you
Yes,
catch it in its original airing or close to it?
I was watching it in its original airings, and it continued to rerun for years after that.
What channel or network would it be broadcast on?
So in those days, I am betting this was on, like, the VHF, the UHF, right? This was
Mhm.
probably on, like, it wasn't one of the major networks. It was one of those UHF channels. And I'm not sure which. Like I said, I was small at this time. Um Primary school and pre-primary school, but yeah, it is this would be one of those leading, it's probably like the first cartoon of the day, that kind of
Okay.
thing.
Yeah. So it's kind of like the gateway into further anime. Um,
Yeah, well, it was a gateway into all of the cartoons that would come on. Like, during the day it would come on as like Star Blazers would come on, and then like Tom and Jerry would come on, and you'd see like the Jetsons, and obviously those would be in reruns at that point. But
yeah.
yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, the premise sounds great. I was just reading the biography on IMDb, which says that it's the year 2199 and the starship has to make a dangerous voyage to a distant planet,
Mhm.
Iskander, and back to Earth to save us all from an alien invasion. And the cast actually, I think, are people who are established voice actors. Maybe not at the time, but maybe this was their break.
Right.
Eddie Allen, Michael Bertolini. I've come across those names before. They're not ones I know off the top of my head, but once you read them, you're like, ah, and this person has lots of IMDb credits. So I'm guessing it was probably not available to watch in Japanese. It was dubbed locally.
No, it was completely, no, there would have been no way. This is way prior pre the internet, right? Is
Okay.
so you got what they aired on TV, and that is all. So you got, and this is pre VHS there, Geo. So
Mm.
I couldn't have even like gone and rented it in Japanese. Is you got what they aired on network television, and that's what you got.
And they weren't
So
willing to go with Japanese. Sure. It's a different time,
absolutely.
a completely different era. Okay, what's next?
So I have never heard of this one. We'll have to like talk about that particular lady, Heidi, Girl of the Alps. I don't even know that one. Well,
It sounds like
from this to that is, this is actually kind of going back in time a little bit. Is this was on a lot in kind of the afternoon so there were like the middle of the day cartoons that would start, and then they were things like Star Blazers that the networks were just kind of trying to push out. Was for
Mm,
like preschoolers, and then those that are like home on the sick days or whatever, I guess. But the more popular a cartoon was, the later in the afternoon it came on. It would come on after the majority of school children had been let out. And for us, that was like around 3 p.m. And you would get more popular things like this Speed Racer, which, I mean, seemed just so different and amazing at the time that you would not have figured out that this is a show that debuted, I think, at least in America in 1963. No, 1967. Debuted in 1967, and had been going ever since. Because, like I said, I'm watching this in the late 70s, early 80s, and it's still on. It is horribly dubbed. Horribly dubbed. This is one of those that's absolutely famous for just the giant mouth movements, and then them saying whatever, and the mouth moving before and after the talking actually started. But um it had a cool car, and shows in the early 80s, if you had a cool car, that was it. You get the Dukes of Hazzard, you get Batman 1966, you get the A Team van, you Hardcastle and McCormick and stuff later on. So Knight Rider, you had a cool car, you're in. And the Mach 5, a cool car, like everything that it did. So Speed Racer was super cool, and you can really kind of see some of the influences of a lot of another anime that's super important that we'll get to in a little bit. You, it's almost completely derivative of that. Do you ever watch the Speed Racer, Geo? This one's a little bit more of a
Uh,
mainstream.
yeah, I actually didn't come across it at all. I only became familiar with it because of the Wachowskis' 2008 live-action Hollywood version called
Yes.
Speed Racer. It's a
Hmm.
good 2 hour, 13-minute film. It's got Matthew Fox and Emil Hirsch in it, a young Ariel Winter, Susan Sarandon. It's got an amazing cast. I've not seen that film, but when it was coming out, it piqued my interest, and it's something I'd
Yeah.
love to catch. And then when I found out it's based on, actual Speed Racer from 1967, um, then I thought that would be really cool to catch. But it's interesting. I've always found anime to be kind of gate kept by a
Hmm.
secret community, usually people who had satellite TV in the 90s, because it was the only things that aired on regular terrestrial TV networks. So the four channels, and then in 1998, it became five channels that were free on the UK airwaves. We only ever saw on ITV, which was channel 3, after school, a little bit of Pokemon, a little bit of Yu-Gi-Oh!
Hmm.
They showed a tiny bit of Dragon Ball Z on Saturday mornings, but it clashed with the Marvel Action Hour, so I
Right.
was not going to watch Dragon Ball Z to erase space for Iron Man, the Incredible Hulk, and the
Oh
Fantastic
yeah, you
Four.
gotta watch that. That's important.
Exactly. I mean, they're all foundational. I think whatever you watch at these sort of aged 3 to 15, I think those things that you enjoy in that era, even if they're cartoons, they're anime, whatever, they stay nostalgically with you for life.
Yeah.
So I reckon that's what happened with the Wachowskis. I reckon they consumed lots of Japanese media and entertainment. We've titled these episodes "The Popularity of Anime," and we're trying to link it to Star Wars Visions. But because we like to have deep discussions on the show, really what we're talking about is the influence and impact of Japanese art and Japanese culture, which
Hmm.
is sensibilities embedded in this form, even though it's anime. And anime and animation are often disregarded by, serious film goers. It's not real. I can't watch it. Live action only. I don't like the animation style. The dubbing annoys me. Sure, those are all gripes that I've had with certain anime, but things like Speed Racer sound awesome, and clearly they are inspirational to a lot of people across generations, and that's how we got a 2008 film from it. And I want to check both out. So thank you for bringing it up because it's something that, when I think of anime, doesn't spring to mind at all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is the influences and the stuff coming from Japan and how it even its release in the U.S. affects all sorts of things. As I was talking about before with Star Blazers, you know, being in 1979 affecting Battlestar Galactica. Well, the amount of time that it may have taken for Star Blazers and the space battleship Yamato to make it over to the U.S., it may have been the other way around. An animation is going to take a far longer to produce than a live action show, and I'm thinking, or I'm looking up over here, that the Battlestar Galactica originally debuted in 1978. So they, like, Space Battleship Yamato, it should have been in Japan, and the years prior to that, them creating that had to
Hmm.
have been at least coincide with the Battlestar Galactica, if not
Hmm.
predate. So how much is that influencing in that concept? And I know stuff like Speed Racer was influenced. If you look at the shape of this car, it's very similar to the shape of the car that was, I think it was a real car that they gave a fictional name in the show called Hardcastle and McCormick. Um, so which came out later. So and all of these kind of things is very James Bondy, right? The saws coming out of the wheels and the oil slicks and the different things that this car could do. It could actually, like, it's got had the top come over and go underwater. All of these are things that we've seen in Bond films in the later times. So just culture influences culture, and anime influences live action and all of the things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen I don't know when the last time I watched the entire the Wachowski the live action Speed Racer all the way through. I mean, it seems part it's visually kind of like a like throw the 60s kind of thing right on you. Um,
Mm.
so it worth a watch. I mean, people are not necessarily going to regard it as the greatest film in the history of man. It's not kind of uh pushing Casablanca out of the way, but it's an
Yeah.
enjoyable film to watch. As is Speed Racer, even badly dubbed, enjoyable to watch. And then of course
Mm.
here we're talking about the influences of things. This is the OG right there. Like there are very few times when I want to like accost people in public, but when I am seeing children in particular that would like see the new versions because they put them out, a new version of like this bad mamma jamma right here. It's like, look, it's a cheap knockoff of Power Rangers. No. Original Lion Voltron, which in Japan, this came directly from Japan. It's another English dub. This was called Beast King Go Lion in Japan. And in the US, this is Voltron, Defender of the Universe. And it's these teens that drive giant lion robots. Then they all kind of have different personalities. They've all got the different colors and they coincide with their lions. And then they fight as the individual lions, and they're fighting these aliens, the evil aliens from the. And at the end, you have to come together to form Voltron. All of the lines, like, psh, psh, psh. And how many things did this influence? I mean, Transformers started doing this for the longest time. Is they had all of the uh, ones that would pop in. Transformers would have ones that combine to make a larger beast. This is what the formulation of Power Rangers all the time was. One of the original kind of things right there. And even again, not the best dubbed is became a huge thing, giant merchandising. I mean, I still have mine. It created it didn't last as long though, but it is one of those shows of the 80s that it's a cartoon that just became a huge merchandising gold mine. And kind of in when this debuted in 1984, it was one of the early ones that was doing that. I mean, GI Joe was out at the time, Transformers was out at the time, you had Voltron out at the time, and they just merchandising all over.
Yeah. I think that Voltron is really, I mean, you can see the animation and design influences everywhere. I think also what's worth saying is that we have the impact and influence of Japanese art and culture, but there's also, as mentioned, there's a kind of boomerang effect, and there's a parallel happening where American and North American culture and Western sort of animation and storytelling and character is also influencing Japan.
Mm,
Um, I mean, post World War II, because of the devastation that the US wreaked on Japan, um, it was, heavily supported as obviously a means of governmental guilt after, the horrors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And that's one reason why Japan had a lot of like capital investment in technology, in industry, in manufacturing, in engineering, which, along with obviously their own expertise and attention to detail and exceptional crafts over generations. Because remember, Japan, you can go to Japan and you can get anything handmade and handcrafted, and it's not even, inflated prices. Whereas you do that in the UK or the US, and you're going to be spending £30 on a unique bespoke custom pin from
mm,
Etsy. Japan has these cultural, little workshops where there'll be glass blowing, there'll be weaving, there'll be someone making a tapestry, someone doing ceramics, um, someone making their own jewelry, and they're so exceptionally dedicated to craft and to the physicality of it. And you see that um, the technology side of Japan really emerged in the sort of late 60s, early 70s. And I think the industrial and corporate and environmental conditions and culture in a society influence the art greatly. And then the art in turn influences the culture and the development. And I think Voltron's a perfect example of that. You started to have amazing toys being manufactured in Japan that had great posable bits and real articulation like a human
Hmm.
would. Way before you had that by, Kenner in the 70s.
Well, and
Those
right, that's where all of these toys and
studios.
the design for these were coming from. Even Transformers and all of that. And we're not mentioning Transformers because it's a cartoon that didn't really have the Japanese sensibilities. Is it wasn't truly an anime. It was influenced by Japanese toys things, but not made in an anime style, really.
Yeah, I would actually, I'm really interested because I'm going to ask you about that a bit more and kind of slightly push back because
Hmm.
I think that the definition of anime is interesting. And as we discussed last week, it differs according to where in the world you are. Um, in Japan, everything is anime because everything is pretty much made locally in terms of what's on TV, what they show on NHK and their other, national channels. But
Yeah.
the definition of anime outside of Japan is a little bit distinct, and it refers to specifically Japanese animation or Japanese style animation in terms of the look of it, the coloring, the actual hand drawn shapes and figures and human expression, the distinctive style, often with very vibrant color contrast. Characters that often look quite innocent, quite young, with large eyes, and then some very diverse and complex storytelling, often with either at least a sort of sense of magical realism, which is a very popular genre in literature of Japan. So Murakami, the legendary literary author, his novels and what he creates as his art is in the genre of magical realism. So it's set in our world, but there's something slightly unique. There's something slightly spiritual. There's something slightly detached going on to the side. And it's beautiful to read. And anime, I think, at the very least, has some of that in its more grounded forms, but substantially the popular ones, the shonen anime, the ones that are aimed at teenage boys or teenage girls, they have huge fantastical elements. They're usually high fantasy or sci-fi. They're often science fiction dystopia, a bit like what we saw with Star Blazers, and you can argue with
Hmm.
Voltron as well. And I think that all of those things, aside from the physical hand-drawn style of the animation, could be applied to Transformers. I think you could say that all
Except for, I think majority of people, and why I support it, and I think others do as well. If you check out and go down the rabbit hole on Reddit and a number of other places, is that so while most of these that we've talked about, Star Blazers and Voltron and One Piece, and these are created by Japanese animation studios from stories by people written in Japan. However, Transformers was created by Hasbro. It was created by Western writers for a Western audience, but simply based on Japanese toys. Now the style becomes a little bit like, the people, when there are people in Transformers, but there are not very many of, look surprisingly similar to the teens and people right there that you see in Voltron, just because they were being drawn by a Japanese studio. I think it was Toei,
yeah, totally, totally.
animation studio. And so that's done. Now there were that in my mind there were later series. The original G1 Generation 1 Transformers I would not call anime at all, but there were others that kind of the Japanese studio was given more free reign on the storytelling and the animation style, and they looked less like realistic vehicles, and they kind of exaggerated the features, especially when they became robots. They looked a lot more like Shogun warriors and things. um I would argue could be far more of an anime. But the original G1, I just think because the stories were written in the West and it was written for Western audiences, it tends to be a little bit less of that.
Yeah. this is really interesting because the definitions of all words are just made up,
Oh yeah,
really. It's
it's
funny.
arguable for sure.
Yeah,
So
I think that yeah, we touched on it last week that Japan anime the term anime in Japan means all anything animated. So Pixar is anime to Japanese people.
hmm,
You know, Disney is anime because it just
that's
it's a shorthand for
really kind
animation.
of mind blowing.
Yeah. They'll probably call it American anime, like I don't know, like
Yeah,
America Gene Anime or something, but to differentiate it. But often they wouldn't because anime genuinely is just the term for animated entertainment in any form. If it's moving pictures, you know, rather than stills. So
wow.
you've got the
Just
manga.
to call like Toy Story anime is that's mind
Yeah, this
blowing.
is if we're going purely by the definitions of the terms and how they're
Oh,
used in society. But I was just looking cursorily at Google and avoided their Gemini AI summary and did my
yes,
own quick summary of it. So if we take definitions from the Wikipedia article for anime, Merriam-Webster definition, Oxford and Cambridge University, a super prof blog, and a voice actor and voiceover website that advises people to get into anime and animation from a creative side. They all suggest the TLDR, the York Notes, Spark Notes of it all is that anime in the West means anime with a Japanese origin, physically
absolutely.
drawn and created
Yeah.
in a Japanese studio or by a Japanese individual, whether it's based originally, whether it's a new concept created by the writer or artist, just for the TV show, or if it's adapted from a new manga that's still airing every week we mentioned last time Shonen Jump, which is a
Mhm.
weekly teenage boy aimed anime that's still in print and very popular, and things like Dragon Ball Z originated there. Or if it's a manga that's legendary but been finished in and compiled in a nice tankobon, in a nice volume, collecting
Yeah.
them all, something like Death Note. That would be the situation there. But the hallmarks from the Western definition are the Japanese art style, detailed backgrounds, vibrant colors, but also quirky characters, larger than life characters, and very much larger than life situations, often galactic, as we've seen with some of these sci-fi
Right. Yeah.
ones.
There's always aliens from another planet coming thing, that sort of thing. But let's
Yeah.
get it kind of keep cruising through because we want to get there. This is one that was on all of our lists. I think this is the first one that actually overlapped. And welcome, Kat. In there, we're just continuing on, and this is, of course, Akira. This is like when you were talking about could you see it in Japanese or whatever. This is the first anime that I knew was anime. When I was watching Star Blazers, when I was watching Speed Racer, I didn't particularly know the origins of that. I was too young to kind of grasp it and know. This is the first thing that I know. Oh, that's Japanese animation. That's where that's coming from. That's what the story is, and all of those things. Oh, you are just that's ooh, amazing. Get Godzilla anime showing on Netflix, split into 3 parts. Man, that's you're giving us homework and things we got to go check out.
Why
Love
not? We
to
like
do that.
to, you know what I think we're going to be doing? I'll do this, Dave. I don't want to add to your
Yes.
mountain of workload. Compile a list of footnotes, references, and further reading in each video, especially when we're going deep dives like this. I can just, list all the things we've mentioned. I think YouTube with AI can summarize that anyway.
Yeah.
Um, because every time we mention someone famous who has an internet presence, their a little tile card with their face and name appears
Mhm.
in the more information in
Hmm.
the YouTube video now, which is quite helpful. Um, so I think that's a really fun thing to do. And yeah, I actually looked up Rabs. I looked up Heidi Girl of the Alps. It's got a few different terms and names according to where you watch it or where you would have consumed it. Heidi Goes to the Mountains is one version that I came across, but um, sorry, anyone who's Japanese or can speak Japanese, I'm gonna just for fun try and say the name in Japanese because it looks challenging. Heidi Returns to the Mountains, or for its original title, Arupsu no Shouju Haji, and Haji is Heidi.
Yeah.
Um, it was a 1974 52 episode a very universal friendly TV series about a girl named Heidi living with her grandfather somewhere in the Alps.
Hmm.
So that sounds like fun. Sounds like a good thing to consume when you're a kid.
Well,
Very wholesome.
I gotta look at this one right here. Can we mention how cartoons in the West are perceived to be childish, as their target audience are children, with the exception of shows like South Park? I'm going to argue that cartoons have been on the air aimed at an adult audience for a very long time. It's now what all shows that were on the air, like, Leave It to Beaver and I Love Lucy and all the things, were kind of just this. It had to be wholesome, family friendly, everything. Which we would regard some of that stuff as childish, like, I Love Lassie. All of those are shows that were aimed at adult audiences that have been around forever. But you also had animation doing the same thing. The Flintstones and the Jetsons were adult shows when they came out. Is now really kids are the ones who would watch that sort of stuff, and you think the humor, but the Flintstones was the Honeymooners animated. So there's a long history of adult oriented animation and cartoons in the US. Is there even ones that have been aimed at children who where there's an adult subtext as well? If you go back and look at Tiny Toon Adventures from the 90s, there are so many like adult behind the scenes jokes in that. You look at the original Looney Tunes, there's so much more. There's another layer for an adult to look at. Yeah, there's the slapstick funny stuff on there. And yeah, South Park is blatant, hit you over the head with its crude humor and stuff, and obviously kind of an adult audience built in to begin with. But there's always been and still is ones that can make it really watchable, not only by the kids, but like the parents in the room get drawn into. SpongeBob being my favorite of this to get there, is my daughters watched SpongeBob when they were little, and just it was always on constantly everywhere. But it will draw you in the little kind of subtleties and things that are going on. Just because, and I think and hope that was done completely purposely. And your continues is, whereas in Japan, anime can be intensely serious, targeted at mature audiences. This one here, Akira, is definitely mature audience to begin with. This is why we're a group of teenage boys on a bootleg video VHS tape are watching this every time we get together in a friend's basement, just because of how influential and how cool we thought that kind of animation aimed at a more mature audience was. So that's a big thing, and you kind of see some influences of this and some of the other that we've talked about when we do get to the animations of Visions season 3. They're directly kind of coming from that. And
Yeah.
then ones we haven't talked about is the superhero girls is a huge thing in Japanese animation. We've only mentioned the Sailor Scouts briefly last time, but it's another one that was like hugely marketable, merchandisable. It's still going, to my knowledge, that there's still Sailor Scout properties that kind of pop up from time to time. You get this. There's your other Star Wars tie-in. We've got the magic of the Dave Filoni, right? Is before we had Star Wars Rebels, we had Filoni directing, producing, writing, even I think writing Avatar.
A little bit. Yeah.
And so
I have lots to say about this one.
well, go by all means.
I'll let you finish. Unless did you want to say
Well, I
something?
mean, like I said, as I was just intending to mention it as an influence that we hadn't mentioned before is your Star Wars tie-in. Is
Mm.
this is this is in a period. While I know some things about it, it was in a period where I was not watching this show as it aired originally. Whereas I had come back around to it by the time Rebels was around, but in this period where Avatar came out, it I was into other things. I was more, Batman and Superman comics and that sort of thing. So, by all means,
Interesting. It came out 2005 on Nickelodeon to 2008. So, do you think also maybe your kids weren't at the right age, so you might have missed it in that
yes,
sense?
that's exactly why I would have missed it too. Is I'm looking at things back from my childhood, not new things, because the 2005 2008, my daughter wasn't old enough yet to appreciate a more serious kind of animation like this. Is that would be the period where we're watching SpongeBob 24/7, and we see a lot of when I could work in things that I enjoyed as we were back to like Scooby Doo.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like SpongeBob is eternal, and I'm going to reveal my cultural blind spot now. I've never watched a full episode of SpongeBob SquarePants.
Oh my dear
Yeah.
gracious on earth.
Yeah, I know all about it. I've seen so many clips. I've seen so many moments. I get all the memes and the GIFs, and I love them. And I think I would really enjoy it. But it started in 1999, and
Mhm.
in 1999, I was watching too many other animated shows, as we've talked about. And I know what SpongeBob has run for. Is it still going?
There is
348
a
episodes.
new SpongeBob movie coming out next week.
Oh yeah, and there's a season 16 of SpongeBob released earlier this year from 12th of September.
The new SpongeBob movie, and again, there's your Star Wars tie-in. The new SpongeBob movie. I was at the panel at San Diego Comic Con not last year, but the year before when they announced it. Is Mark Hamill will be voicing the Flying Dutchman in that.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. I remember saying it on the Unifying Force. That'll be fun. Mark Hamill's one of the most talented actors of all time. I think that sometimes we are foolish to separate voice actors and voiceover people from
Mm-hmm.
actual actors, but they're all performers. And I think this goes for stunt people, it goes for vocal people, it goes for musicians who record the score and do the sound editing. They're all the performers, they're all the creatives, they're all the artists, and nothing
Yeah,
we
and
should
I
give
mean,
more
other
credit.
than not necessarily recognizing and knowing who he was, I will argue with you that his performance as the Joker in Batman the Animated Series is nearly as iconic of a film role as Luke Skywalker completely.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Especially because Star Wars was 1977 to 1982, whereas the Batman series was what, 1994 till now? Sometimes he's
Well,
still good.
Batman the Animated Series in its original context, which is what I'm saying, and that he was the most influential in, did
Yeah,
have an ending date that's sooner than that. But
yeah. But
yeah, it's
he's been Batman
inspired all the
for
stuff that there are still Batman animated cartoons that are popping up, now.
yeah. Oh, 1992 actually. Is 1992 to 1995 was Batman's original the animated series run. And then you had the new Batman Adventures from 1997 to 9. But unfortunately, that wasn't shown very much on CITV here. So I didn't
Hmm.
really see much of the new Batman Adventures, random episodes here and there. Um, but
And
let's
then
talk
you
about
still
Avatar.
have stuff
Okay.
going like the Brave and the Bold and all sorts of things.
Yeah, ongoing different versions. The thing about Batman is he's got so many skins, there's so many different aspects and takes on him. But I was actually just talking earlier this week to some people who are very much into the Japanese entertainment consumption. Anime fans, manga readers, people who love Japanese culture and are learning the Japanese language. And Akira came up and Avatar came up. Not one after the other like we've done it, but maybe because we're starting alphabetically and they both begin with A. I don't know. We talked about Akira first, I think, because most people consider Akira the beginning of Western anime, the
Oh
beginning
no
of the
no no
Western.
no!
Most people who are of a particular generation, I think for millennials and Gen Z, Akira is the benchmark for modern anime. But obviously, we've talked about anime starting way before that, and its influences have come from the post World War II period, as we touched on. But Akira is interesting because, first of all, I think Akira is a great title. It doesn't really refer to anything specifically about the film's themes, obviously the main character, but it's a unisex name that's really popular in Japan. And depending on the kanji and the characters that you used and the context, obviously, it can mean anything from, bright and clear and light, because it uses kanji characters that reflect the sun and the moon, or also clear, shining, someone who has wisdom, someone who has intelligence, someone who makes a difference, a jewel sparkling in the night. And what I really love about that, and the reason why I'm banging on about it, is because here's a Star Wars reference. We're talking about the impact and influence of Japanese culture.
Hmm.
Who's the other Akira responsible for George Lucas? Mr.
Oh yeah,
Kurosawa.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Kurosawa is well, you can tell obviously, and we've talked about this before on other episodes of the show. You can catch, and I'm sure we'll talk about it again. I mean, the Jedi are obviously wearing samurai robes, and the Sith to some point, Darth Vader as well. It's the cape and the tabard underneath, and then the suit and the leather protective suit underneath that. It's and even the helmet being flared out at the butt. It's a very kind of samurai shape. It's very much, when you go down and look at it, not only Lucas's influence in the telling of the story being that way, but the costuming and the characters and all are very much among other things
Hmm.
influenced by Japanese culture. I think that's one of the things that makes Star Wars completely timeless. And I wish I had queued up the video because I didn't think we were going to kind of get to this, but the clip that you had sent of George Lucas, I don't have queued up, but where he's talking about, storytelling today is repetitive. It's coming from, you are telling the same story over again, whereas some of the timelessness of Lucas is his influence by Joseph Campbell, his influence by Kurosawa, his influence by the Flash Gordon serials. He took all of those different pieces from different people from vastly different kind of cultural areas and put it all together to coalesce into Star Wars, right?
Hmm.
So whereas, a lot of people who write, and I'm not talking about Star Wars in particular, but are writing sequels to movies, aren't necessarily looking at the original influences and taking other influences and trying to put in there. You're taking the property that already exists and writing another story within that world, and you're only looking at that story and that universe and writing something else for it, as opposed to taking this from Japan and this from this and this, from this days of street racing in Modesto, California, and putting that in and all of the things.
Yeah, that's so true. I actually didn't think that maybe George Lucas was influenced by the Japanese car culture, which is huge. I think America's known about huge Japanese car culture since the Need for Speed.
Yeah.
Sorry, not Need
Well,
for
I mean,
Speed.
he was
Yes,
more influenced by the American
Fast and
car
Furious.
culture,
Yeah, definitely.
but
Um, I didn't mean the Need for Speed, although that is the case for video games. I actually meant the Fast and the Furious.
Fast and the
But
Furious, yes.
yeah, that's another thing that I think is a cross-pollination cultural import from America to Japan, is the love of mechanics, the love of cars, the love of engineering, and the love of racing.
Mm.
Um, and also motorcycles and motor racing, whether it's professional rally, F1. There's Yuki
Absolutely.
Tsunoda currently is in the top 20 Formula One drivers in the world. Honda have had a manufacturing constructors company making F1 cars for off and on for the last sort of 30 years. Some of the most comfortable, regular, everyday cars that I've been in, and the most reliable ones, are the Hondas, the Toyotas, a nice Lexus if you want to be a bit fancier. And again, this comes as a result of America almost paying reparations back financially, culturally, economically and technologically to Japan in the rebuilding of Japan and the reconstruction of society post 1945 and after the horrors of nuclear bombing. So I think Akira, anytime you've got sci-fi that is dystopian, it's almost directly a result of the present material conditions in society and the not necessarily the hopes and dreams, although there's a little bit of that sprinkled in at the end of Akira, but all our fears, our anxieties, our insecurities, and our vulnerabilities expressed through character and through story. And I think Akira is one of the best examples of that in any entertainment or literary form. And
I mean,
I
it's
know I
amazing and still influential into the kind of things that I like to watch today. It's like you said, dystopian. It's, you know, the Running Man is cycled around, and the Running Man is in theaters again, whereas the Running Man, the original one, aired about in America at least about the same time as actually a little bit earlier than Akira. So it would have been a 85, 86 kind of thing, and then Akira in 88. But tell us what your take. You said you had a lot to say about Avatar: The
Avatar.
Last Airbender. Tell us.
Yeah, I think Avatar is the same level of cultural, psychological, sociological, and spiritual impact on individuals at particular ages in which they come across it and are immersed in it, as Star Wars has had for
Mm,
generations. I think that it's not just the Dave Filoni connection, but we'll get to that. That's more a character thing, and how Dave Filoni is actually incredible at writing good young characters, characters that are children, but they're not childish. They're mature. They're world weary. They're wise, and they have these difficult obstacles to overcome, and the struggle makes them stronger. But also, Dave Filoni, and then also the creators of Avatar itself. Uh, are very good at writing strong female characters. And I know that can almost be a cliche nowadays, but there's so many stories in the world, and so many of them are still absolutely dominated by men, which is fine. But you feel like in the modern age, there's been a pushback culturally for people to try and make things, more egalitarian and have more voices coming from different marginalized communities, um, not creatively and organically, because someone feels there's an important story to tell, or that they're from that culture, or that they're a fan of that culture and it resonates with them. But in terms of Hollywood corporation, talking about bad filmmaking and
mm.
horrible business decisions, and corporations gone nuts, it's that. And I don't want to talk about this for more than 30 seconds, but the whole like DEI push, which then triggers right wing people to go crazy online, which then triggers liberal people to go crazy online, and you end up having a culture war in the YouTube comments about The Last Jedi. So yeah, that's my end state. Like that's to me, that was the symbol of the end of times culturally. It was YouTube in December 2017, and directly because of Ryan Johnson's film, for better or worse. I would just add that I would defend The Last Jedi to death against anyone who says it's not good,
We,
at
we
least.
we've talked many times. I have very specific things that I dislike about The Last Jedi, but they are not the things that everybody else gets all bent out of shape about. Is I'm just
Yeah,
like I would like Luke Skywalker's motivations better explained.
sure. I get
For me
that.
to accept them is I needed
Mm.
more of that. But anyway,
Okay,
like moving along in
let's
there
get to this.
is
Yeah. So the reason why that's relevant and The Last
yeah.
Jedi was my deliberate endpoint for that tangent was because actually I came across an incredible video, and I've mentioned this before. I don't really watch YouTube like a lot of people my age and younger do. I'm
Mm,
not somebody. I mean, Mr. Beast is cool, but all his videos have the same cringy format. But I do like the occasional video essay, something that either someone talks to the camera like we're doing, or they analyze something just with visuals, like a slideshow, but they're
yeah,
commentating over it. And I came across one that is fantastic, and I will try and search it out and share it, and we can put it in the YouTube more
absolutely.
info. But it was talking about the importance of villains to a character-based story, not just narratively for fantasy and sci-fi, but for a slice of life drama. You still need somebody who's a bad apple and a bad actor for the hero the protagonist to learn something from, to struggle against, and hopefully to overcome, but not always. And in Avatar, you have character arcs that happen with very strong sort of ups and downs. There's a huge roller coaster that um, Kitara, Toph, and Aang go on as three young friends, and it's incredible that you have, I would say, character work and development that feels organic and genuine. And I know this might just sound like I'm bootlicking the makers of Avatar right now. Hey, if they make a sequel, I'll happily be involved. But they, what they've done is they've created something that is literary, but it's on Nickelodeon. That's quite a
Yeah,
feat.
that's
And why is it literary? What makes me say that? What do I even mean by literary? I don't mean, they tried to recreate War and Peace or Pride and Prejudice. They've created something uniquely different and new. What they've done is they've synthesized both culturally and kind of the spiritual meta and zeitgeist of East and West together in one new form. And it works well for 99% of people who give Avatar a try. I still know some people who just dismiss Avatar. They say, "Oh, I'm not 13 anymore. I missed it in
mm,
2005." And it's so childish, I can't do it. I've tried to watch the first episode and I fell asleep 8 times. There's a YouTuber I know who said that to his audience, and he's actually like a film critic type, but he's millennial generation. And I hate that about him. I don't comment in anything, but I feel like signing into YouTube and just being like, here's a little paragraph of why you're wrong. And the reason why I defend Avatar, the same reason is why I defend The Last Jedi. And that's the point that this YouTuber made. They compared the character growth and journey. Dave, have you seen the whole of Avatar?
I have not seen all of Avatar. No,
Okay. So
is
slight spoilers.
it's not one that I've ever, but I do appreciate your points in seeing Filoni's work that immediately followed this, because again, we have Star Wars Rebels, which I have rewatched over and over. We have an entire show on the network that has since ended that was all about nothing about going back and episode by episode watching along, analyzing this, doing deep dives on the work of Star Wars Rebels. And if this is where that came from, which I think in a large portion it is, and just from things I know, this is Rebels is Filoni's continuation of the styles that he was doing in Avatar. I can see how that is completely believable.
Yeah. I can see Rabs made some nice comments about 2 minutes
Yeah,
ago. We'll get
is I
to
was
we'll
going to
get
get
to
to
them.
that.
Yeah. So just well, let's credit the two makers of Avatar, which Dave Filoni's a key creative and writer for it, but Brian Konietzko and Michael Dante Di Martino. Um, so they were pretty young when they came up with the concept of Avatar, but it's clearly a synthesis of everything they've consumed culturally and
Mm,
literarily, visually, and probably by reading a lot as well. And this is the only example I know, not just in the modern era and not just on TV in animation or film, but generally in books. And I haven't read all the books in the world, obviously. And there's many histories that are unknown to us that our biases and blind spots don't allow us to see yet. It's the only thing that actually represents the whole of Asia, pretty much, in the different nations. But the
mm,
different nations aren't specifically one country only. So, for example, the first reading a lot of people have is the Fire Nation being ancient China. And it's partly because of the stylization of the characters, the sheer number and volume of people that they have, the discipline and regimentation of their armies, the number of soldiers they have, and the way they train, and the way their attitudes are. And then also the way that ancient China managed to have dominion over a lot of territory. That's what happens with empires and reigns and throughout history. People are always fighting over land and trying to control it and trying to dominate, subjugate, enslave maybe the local or indigenous people. And Avatar starts every single episode with a great summary, world building lore that drops you right in. So they have Katara narrate the background story and the
hmm
current political situation at the beginning of every episode. That's the animated opening. Rather than having an anime song by a great J-pop rock band, which is great, and a lot of anime has that, since the early 2000s till now, they still go for that format. And Korean anime does the same. This
Well, like
has
the
something.
Pokemon theme is stuck in my head right here now that you said that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would argue the Pokemon themes throughout all the seasons that I've seen up until season 23, the final one with Ash, which I will finish at some point.
Yeah.
Um, all their songs are, to use the online term,
Earworms.
absolute bangers. Yeah. They're designed to stay in your mind lyrically and musically. Avatar decided not to go for the animated cartoon music style. You know, every anime that does that basically has an opening theme that's a music video,
Hmm.
whereas Avatar goes straight in for story, but it doesn't smash you over the head with it. She just talks so simply about how, um, I might massacre the line because it's been a while, but um, and then everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked. And that just tells you what's going on. There
Yeah.
was peace and harmony between the countries, and then one country decided to be colonial and oppressive about it, and the others suffered. The other thing they do really well is they tap into, I shouldn't say religious because the term religion again is loaded and it has a completely different definition in the West than it does anywhere else in the world, not just the East, but the global South as well. But there are religious, not connotations or motifs or little, bits and bobs like George Lucas has with the Force initially, with Ben talking to Luke in A New Hope. Just a sprinkle of spirituality and morality there. Enough there for you to probably base your belief system on, but not that much detail. Whereas Avatar goes fully into using the concept of the basic original elements in terms of the earth, the air, fire, water, and so on. Those are fundamental aspects that people for tens of thousands of years have used to generate stories and to explain natural phenomena around the world, not just in the East. But this taps into indigenous populations and communities explaining how the stars are there, why the sky is blue, why it's important to revere the earth and treat her well, Mother Nature as an organic being herself. And then you see that taken in other forms. So let's say James Cameron's Avatar
Yeah.
completely steals that theme with
Yeah.
Awa and the oneness and the way we're all connected spiritually by some sort of light and energy. And Avatar does that. Um, I'd really love to ask James Cameron so many questions about his world of Avatar because it's not just the name that's taken inspiration. Of course,
Right.
it's a word in Sanskrit which refers to an incarnation, a manifestation of something, usually something divine or holy. Avatar would be the correct pronunciation of it. But in this story format, you've got Eastern beliefs, Eastern philosophy, actual fables and lessons, but then don't beat you over the head with it about karma, about dharma, the spiritual duty of an individual on this earth when you're lucky enough to have this human life, the idea of reincarnation, the idea of Newtonian laws of consequence, of action and reaction, the idea of energy being eternal, um, the idea of time being just an abstract, concept, and something that is artificially imposed on by humans to the world. And really, time is just obviously relativistic, and it's invented by us so that we can get this, get our stuff done each day. But there's so many aspects of world philosophy, spirituality, and history and culture that is embedded in Avatar, but it's all organic, and it doesn't ever lecture you or smash you over the head with a baseball bat with it all. It's all integrated, and it all feels completely chill and very cozy, very calming, very warm and welcoming. They go through absolute horror some of the time, and they have one of the best villains of all time written in it. I'm saying Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader, Revan, Darth Revan type, swinging between a protagonist and an antagonist and back. Um, the character development of Prince Zuko, who unfortunately is not in this but is the fourth member, is the reason why The Last Jedi is a great comparison. And the YouTube video compared the development of Prince Zuko and his story arc through, and I won't completely ruin it for you, Dave, but
Yeah.
he's in the Fire Army initially. He's the heir apparent to the throne of the Fire Nation, and the Fire Nation's trying to enslave everybody else. So he could be, the next king of all the lands of the world. And he obsesses over trying to find Ung, and therefore the people we see in this shot, because they believe Ung as the only avatar of from the air tribe, He's the one that can bring balance. He's the chosen one. He is reincarnated in different forms. So when the avatar dies, their life force, their soul goes into a new body, and that new avatar is meant to be discovered. A bit like the Dalai Lama, a little bit
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the story of Buddha. And you can see that obviously from the way Avatar's Aang is dressed and the clothing and the outfits that the characters wear. You've got the two brother and sister that are helping him out, Toph and Katara, and they are very clearly Aboriginal, Inuit type, indigenous native First Peoples, and they're the water tribe. So it makes perfect sense. Um, you've got actual spiritual people who are yogis who live in the mountain, who abstain from the world and, sort of meditate and are a bit quirky and kooky, but
yeah.
the
Well,
idea
and I
is
think this is the good time for Rav's comment, which is like on the point of DEI. Anime has always been unintentionally inclusive, and whether that is another thing from or a theme of it being a Japanese origin or an Eastern origin as opposed to a Western, whether that's the unintention or whether there's always the trans species, alien characters, animals from here, there, whatever. It's a more worldly thing, and is that because it's coming from a different part of the world, or is it intentional in Japanese culture, or is it intentional for the point of it being a show of in the anime? I don't know.
yeah, I think that's really what I think is really important and goes back to Rav's point. When we're talking about culture and integration, there's one aspect which is the storytelling part. And can you tell stories that are diverse and inclusive and have representation that not only is reflective of the real world and modern society, but fair and just and accurate? That's the aim and that's the goal for everybody, ideally. What you don't want is things shoehorned in due to the C-suite thinking, oh, we can see that K-pop Demon Hunters has created this K-pop phenomenon, even though K-pop has been massive for about 30 years. But what you don't want is someone who works for Netflix being like, okay, now because K-pop Demon Hunters was great and we picked that up and we've broken records in the music industry and streaming industries and film industries around the world. Let's flood the market with other imitation K-pop Demon Hunter types, and then Netflix's rivals like Prime Video or Disney
Well, you're
Plus.
you're back to the point that
Start.
man, I wish I had loaded that Lucas thing, which is like people, the executives are like they're watching this. Oh, I see this. I want you to make something like that instead of seeing this and this and this and this and this that are cool. Let's make an amalgamation and put those together and tell our own unique story. They're like, oh, K-pop Demon Hunters is huge. You need to do an exact clone of K-pop Demon Hunters, and it'll make us a boatload of money.
Yeah, let's golden is a massive symbol. Let's call one platinum and go even bigger and better.
Yeah.
It's that stupidity. I'm wondering if I play the clip loud enough from my phone, I think it could work.
What are
I'll
you,
give
what
it
are
a
you trying to play?
The Problem with Hollywood from George Lucas.
Let me try and load it. Keep talking.
Okay, so it's a really fun video you'll see. It's only about 50 seconds and it summarizes everything we're saying really well. And it's George Lucas, so it's the perfect place to show it. Hopefully, we won't be DMCA struck by having George Lucas's voice. But going back to Avatar, the arc of Kylo Ren as Ben Solo to Kylo Ren, which happened off screen, we start with Kylo Ren and then he goes back to being Ben Solo eventually. That arc is a fantastic parallel to Prince Zuko's arc. So Prince Zuko is originally Kylo Ren, basically. He's raised on the dark side, although Kylo Ren wasn't, I know. But if you look at the visual dictionary and the backing stories and the comics for Star Wars, Kylo Ren's been on the dark side for a good number of years. I spoke to somebody who worked on The Last Jedi, and apparently J.J. Abrams was telling cast and crew that in his head, Kylo Ren had been, Sith light for about 10 years. So Kylo Ren's not, 18, 19. He's meant to be over 30. And I always find the aging in Star Wars super weird. But that's another connection Star Wars has with anime. Anime is also super weird with the aging. There are too many characters that are 13 to 17. And you think, hmm, why are the female characters so young and the male characters look like men? There's some kind of weird imbalance there. And again, it's a patriarchal cultural phenomenon around the world. Japan has that issue, Hollywood has that issue. So there are lots of things to overcome that you explore when we're comparing cultural things as well. And I think it's really interesting and why this conversation can go on and on. Do we have it lined up?
Keep going. I'm
Okay.
switching this to be able to switch to that.
Yeah, no problem. Okay. So yeah, I think the term DEI has just become a hot button topic and a trigger issue and a wedge issue. So when you talk about political, cultural things, the term wedge issue is an issue that's been brought to the fore by an individual or a media outlet or somebody, maybe a politician, maybe a whole group like MAGA base or the Squad, the Democrats. And the wedge issue is something that's been deliberately brought up to drive people apart. So in the culture war that we have going on, which is another term that I absolutely hate, I'll make it very clear: we don't abide by or advocate for any of these terms. We're just using them so that we can discuss accurately, modern issues. But also, the other term that gets used and abused is the term woke. And it's funny because woke is, what does woke literally mean? You're awake. If you're awake, that's good. What did we have? You get the fandom menace, the toxic online tiny portion of the Star Wars fans who have hated this Disney since before you were born and just decided as soon as Disney bought Lucasfilm, Star Wars was ruined. Then you had other people who saw that J.J. Abrams was bringing in a female lead, a Latino lead, and an African American lead, and thought, "Oh no, it's a liberal Disney agenda." It's
Well,
silliness,
let's
really.
try and get to George now. Let's see
Let's
what we've got.
let's see the other problem
Is
with Hollywood.
all right. So let's see where we get. All right. Let me know if you guys can hear the audio when we go.
The stories they're telling are just old movies.
This is George Lucas explaining the biggest issue in Hollywood right now. Too many sequels and not enough original ideas.
Let's do a sequel. Let's do another version of this movie. And it's not just in movies, but in almost everything. There's no original thinking. It's like people just, I saw something, let's do something like that.
Yeah.
And it's also the way the movies are sold. If you go in and say, I've got something that you've never seen before, and you don't understand it, it's very hard to get a deal. I mean, you can do it, but it's like the big studios, I mean, they don't want that. They want something that is like something they've seen, because they don't have an imagination to come up with, to see something that isn't there. Nobody knows what to do. The stories they're telling are just old movies.
This
And there we go from the maker's mouth himself.
Absolutely. I think it's so quick shout out to that guy. That was all underscores between words. A guy who loves Star Wars on Instagram. Thank you for cutting that clip and showing it as a reel for us to find.
Well,
Yeah, it's
I was
really a
going to
great.
say George is 100% right, because here's the spoiler alert. Nobody wants to hear it, but it's true. George never wanted to do sequels to Star Wars because Star Wars was an experimental film that happened to take off, and he was going to use its success to build his dream retreat for filmmakers, Skywalker Ranch, which is why he handed off the sequel to uh, Irvin Kershner. And yeah, he gave pointers on what the story should be, but when it came time to release the movie, Irvin's like, "Aren't you going to come on the press tour?" He's like, "No, this is your movie. You go, support it." But then people wanted a sequel to that, and granted, it was a cliffhanger, so you needed one. And the reason they recycled the Death Star in the third movie, which is an old idea from an early script, was because he didn't really want to do a third movie. He was already doing Indiana Jones. He had other things he wanted to do. And so, like, to his point about studios wanting remakes and sequels and reboots, it's because it's a proven formula. It's like, oh, the fans love it. That means it'll sell more tickets. And because business studios are businesses first and foremost, and they have prickly relationships with artists, and then of course they're just going to keep rebooting everything. And what we're seeing today is that kids like who grew up in like the 80s and the 90s watching all those movies have become filmmakers and are obsessed with homaging that stuff. But it's like, no, you need to create new things. Like the people like who grew up in the 30s and the 40s watching those movies didn't remake that stuff when they became filmmakers in the 60s and 70s. They did new things. But for some reason, the later generations of fans are just rebooting and remaking everything rather than trying to be original. And that's the issue in Hollywood. Yeah, you could find a lot of originality on the independent circuit, but you don't see a lot of that on the big blockbuster or big studio blocks anymore. And the
No,
reason you're seeing so many filmmakers run to streamers is because streamers like Apple and Netflix have so much money that they're willing to shell out for big talent, not because they care about the art, but it's like they like the prestige of being able to say Netflix going, "Ooh, look, we financed the latest Martin Scorsese film," and Apple saying, "Look, we did that again too," you know. But yeah, he's right. It's a business, and the business side wants to reboot and remake everything. That's why the sequel trilogy didn't really have many original ideas, because it was just, let's just remake what we did before. And they'll never admit it, but I'm sure that was a Disney edict, because if you recall, J.W. Rinsler, who wrote those wonderful making of Star Wars books, wrote one for The Force Awakens. And Lucasfilm was going to publish it. They had no problem with it. But Disney intervened and brought down the hammer when their editors looked at it and said, no, you were not going to publish that book. And so they did The Art of Star Wars, The Force Awakens, and that followed over with Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, where they don't give you too much behind-the-scenes information. And that makes me wonder if that maybe Disney didn't want people to know the full story with Force Awakens, because I suspect there were edicts from Disney that said, no, we want you to just remake the original movie, just faster and more intense. Because that's what Force Awakens and Last Jedi are.
Ironically, they're doing what George loves to say, despite George going, no, this is not what we should do.
Exactly. That's it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the clip for this entire show right there.
Faster and more intense.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. We take that out of context, though. There's a specific reason he did say that in the behind-the-scenes DVD documentary. But yeah, I do take your point. I just want to actually, back on the clip, I don't really like looking at comments normally, but there are some really interesting points made that, we can almost respond to ourselves. So one person writes a whole paragraph saying, Star Wars is just a Western set in space made of old films like Flash Gordon, Akira Kurosawa's Hidden Fortress and Forbidden Planet. He's right, though. Most mainstream films are not original, but a lot of independent films are. Try watching films from other countries. Hollywood has been stealing from them for decades. So,
well, yeah, we just talked about that. Star Wars it's Kurosawa's, it's Hidden Fortress, it's Forgotten Planet. But again, they throw in all sorts of different things in it as well, and putting together unlike genres in a particular way. It's one of the reasons why we love Firefly. It's a space western, that two things that seemingly don't go well together, when put together well, work. And you can't just go, oh, we're going to put the Old West together with space, because Cowboys and Aliens clearly didn't work. But, Firefly, Star Wars do.
Yeah, they do. As does Cowboy Bebop.
And then the last little edict is that he went back and did the prequel trilogy because that was the R&D department for the digital cinema revolution, and a perfect playground for it as well.
Yeah. It's interesting that another commenter says, I mean, George Lucas is the king of sequels / prequels, but he's absolutely right. George Lucas only made 2 original films, one Star Wars, one Indiana Jones film, and then he made 11 sequels. That made me chuckle inside. But, other good points, which are, I don't know how you guys feel about this, because I think Hollywood's...
American Graffiti was an original movie. I mean, THX kind of riffed a lot on 1984, but...
he's talking about... The person's talking about from Star Wars onwards.
Oh, Star Wars onwards, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but like I said, he's using them for, his experimental... Like, we need to advance the digital cinema revolution. Star Wars is the perfect playground for that. Even the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, the only reason that show existed was because he wanted to practice things like digital backgrounds and duplicating digital characters in the backgrounds, and that was the most expensive show on TV at the time, $1 million per episode. But that's the thing. You look behind the scenes of, like, why does he make these movies? And you realize there's another reason for it. It's not just because he wants to make a movie. It's like he's advancing some type of experiment.
He wants to make this guy right here.
Yeah, why not?
Well, that's why it was. It's like, let's make the first completely digital animated leading character and go.
But even Clone Wars had that was state-of-the-art, brand new type of animation where they combined anime with 3D CGI to give it a very unique look that nobody had seen before.
Yeah.
So even that was experimental.
Yeah. There's another point that I think we should respond to is, studios owned by corporations ultimately screwed the film industry.
Yeah, absolutely. All the moguls were tired, and it didn't matter that they already had a lot of money. They had an opportunity to get even more money than they'd ever made in their entire lives by just selling to corporations, which know everything about marketing and nothing about art or storytelling.
Yeah.
And we still see that today. Executives thinking that they're the most indispensable people. And it's like, no, number crunchers graduate from Ivy League schools every semester. There's nothing unique about you. But their egos can't stand that. So they like to think they're, wonderkins and shit. Sort of like what we're seeing with the whole attempt of Netflix buying Warner Brothers right now, where Ellison pulled off the Skydance merger so smoothly. He thinks, oh, I'm new kid on the block. I'm just going to buy Warner Brothers, and it'll be just as easy as before. It's like, no. And now you're trying to launch a hostile takeover. And it's like, no, just because you have a lot of money, your executive doesn't necessarily mean you have the talent. And he's like, oh, but I'm going to do all these wonderful things. It's like, well, you haven't done anything yet, so we don't know if you're actually the right leader for this company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There needs to be there's got to be some separation.
Yeah, like Chapek, when he became CEO, he created an extra layer of bureaucracy for the sake of giving all his, Ivy League friends jobs who didn't know anything, because they were bankers and accountants who knew nothing about talent. And Feige was really pissed off because they were just telling him to make all this slop and meet these ridiculous deadlines. And when Iger came back, the first thing he did within like a week, he fired all of Chapek's friends and got rid of that bureaucratic layer that had been responsible for pushing these ridiculous quotas that you have to have a series out and every 5 months or whatever. It's like, you can't make good art when when it's deadline oriented nonsense. I mean, everything's deadline oriented, but it's like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, you have to constantly have
Yeah.
something on the service, and it's not generated by actual artistic intent.
Yeah, it's the crunch. We talk about crunch in different industries. It happens most with VFX artists and developers and writers in the video game industry, but it happens with Marvel Studios. I think a big article came out around the time of Infinity War, and then by the time Endgame came around, people started realizing, hey, there's like 300,000 different artists who are responsible for Thanos' thumb. Let's start, giving these people more credit. And if they're getting crunched, where they're basically asked for, they're not paid for any overtime, but they're expected to stay in the office for 18 hours until, the resolution on the visual graphic around Doctor Strange's magic circle is looking 4K. Just little things that no one will really care about and don't obviously affect anything narratively. For character or story, but they just go for the most top tier visual in quality. These things are just it's like the people who are in charge of the business side are just unable to look at things creatively, and they don't want to listen to people who might advise them or consult them, like Kevin Feige in the situation you just mentioned. I didn't actually know Chapek did that. The fact that he got loads of non-creative, non-Hollywood people just jobs in Disney, that's just insane. And there's one more comment I want to read out from the George Lucas Hollywood issue
go
video.
ahead.
And that is it's a follow-up. Actually, it's the second most liked comment, which is a little bit political, but it's fine. Capitalism kills the arts because love of money ruins the art. And then a really good reply to that is, an interesting topic we could discuss at another time. There are people around the industry inside who say this all started in 1975 with Jaws. People paid to see it multiple times.
Yeah.
It was the first time this phenomenon happened. So after that, the studios decided they all wanted the next Jaws, and they forgot all about Chinatown, about Serpico, about Dog Day Afternoon.
I mean, they're not wrong in a lot of aspects. We've talked about here before on the show that there have been good sequels, but there's also been really crappy sequels. And some of the good sequels are the ones where you just take those characters and you go in a completely different direction. You change the theme, you change the expectation, like The Empire Strikes Back. But yeah, you can't just always live with the same thing over and over again. And is it the fault of Spielberg and Lucas, who are some of the ones that we hail as the greatest creators ever? Kinda. But, is it the fault of a lot of others as well. Would it be better if all studios, like I don't even love the fact that all my Marvel is Disney now, and The Simpsons is Disney, and why do all of these things have to be lumped together in one ginormous kind of thing, as opposed to having a little studio over there, a little studio over there, a little studio over there, a little studio that can make different kind of decisions and give us all sorts of different stuff. At this point, if you really want to make a mainstream movie, you have to go to, pretty soon it's going to be, you're going to have to go to Disney, Amazon, or Netflix, and that's it.
Well, the reason, like you
Apple
said,
too.
why does everything have to be owned is because shareholders are greedy. It's like why, like Warner Brothers was on the uptick. They're separating from Discovery next year and going to offload all their debt on them as well. Why are you selling the company at all? And it's ironic because David Ellison is the one who made all the unsolicited offers in the first place. It's just what gave Warner Brothers the idea to open up to bidders. And it's like, why do you need more stuff? Oh, we have to boost our shareholder price because the shareholders just want money. They don't care about who they sell to. And
We're
that's basically what it
also
comes down to.
living in a time where, and I don't know why it is that it doesn't happen, where creatives don't have to go through that avenue either. Is, if you want to write a book, write the next great novel, you self-publish it. If you want to create a film that's, doesn't use any other IP or whatnot, there so many packages that are free or cheap online that you can create your own special effects and do your own editing and do your own this and that and release it on your own podcast or release it on your own YouTube channel or whatnot. And why does it, this is a whole other show. We're completely off topic and we could be doing that, but yeah, why are those creatives not getting hugely, why aren't they the ones making huge amounts of money, and why do we continue to go to and complain about the schlocky blockbusters that they're churning out? Because that's what the money says that we're doing.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to that comment. I think that person was right. I know it's a difficult discussion to have because of political terminology, and it's a very wedge issue, as I described, but it comes down to what the shareholders are wanting, the stakeholders, as Kat mentioned, and why is the systemic structure like that? Why are all our institutions influenced by people who have no skill in the area in which they domineer over? They have no direct experience in the area in which they consult or take business analysis or strategic whatever. We've got an entire couple of industries of things like business analysts, consultants, management consultants, project managers. These jobs are all great, and I really respect anyone who does them. And I know people that are close to me who might do one of these jobs. But you ask them, what do they actually do when they visit their clients, whether it's, Amazon or Disney or Marks and Spencer's, and they have no skill or experience in the field in which they're advising and consulting. All they're doing is literally applying, we had this data, this is from last quarter, I've made a nice bar chart for you. Have a look at the PowerPoint behind me. As you can see with my laser pointer, these were down and these were up. So my financial forecast is, for next quarter, let's focus on these 3 areas. That's it. And Disney's been relying on that for, I don't know how long it's been this corporate and industrial. I feel like Walt Disney's always been one of the big corporate guys, but he was a creative in the first place, and that's why his name's on the company, and hopefully his name will stay. Now Disney is in association with being a massive, evil corporate company that's killed the creative industry. George Lucas has been one of the biggest proponents of that idea. He's into, I can't remember, who was it that he was interviewed by? Was it 60 Minutes? Or when there's that famous clip that went viral a few times where he says that he regrets selling Disney to white slave traders or something. Regrets selling Lucasfilm to Disney, who are that. And basically describes how he wishes he hadn't sold Lucasfilm to Disney specifically. He doesn't express wishing
The
he hadn't
question
sold
being,
Lucasfilm.
would if he still owned it and they were putting out new content, and admittedly it would be different content,
That was a good
but
interview.
but would he be the evil empire as opposed to Disney at this point? Would we be having that same discussion about Lucas himself, even if he had walked away from the day to day and we're letting other creators, if he'd still managed to, this is one of those threads of history that you unravel. Like if Filoni and Favreau were doing what they're doing with the Mandoverse, but under the helm of Lucas as opposed to the helm of Disney. If the Acolyte had happened under Lucas, would it be his fault?
It wouldn't have happened. It would have been radically different. Lucas would not have approved those scripts.
Possibly.
But also, well, definitely. but Lucas also, under Lucasfilm, under Lucas, all their products and everything were a lot cheaper. Everything was more kind of user friendly. They were friendly with the fan bases and everything, and now it's super corporate, super expensive and everything because it's Disney. And like a lot of the series they're churning out, it's like, well, what do the metrics tell us? Oh, well, we need to have this and this and that, and and that's how you get things like the Acolyte. And it's like, well, no, the artist wanted it to be a limited series and that kind of thing, and maybe and a Sith story, but the metrics are telling us, well, Jedi are going to be popular. We'll cast all these hot button actors, or what, and it's like you could see the analytics that work.
Thing what it was.
Yeah.
So
just taking it back to go on.
Cannot make
we're at an
art
hour and a half now.
Can't make art by committee. So let's go back and let's finish up. And like we said, go ahead, Gio.
Yeah, I'll take it back to Japan. This is another political allegory, so I don't know how much this will go down well. But post World War II, Japan was almost destroyed by the United States. There was political, social, and economic regret from the entire West over what happened. Japan was rebuilt with the help of themselves and their own industriousness and intelligence and cultural, skill, with the help of American capital. What you have now, since maybe 1950s until 2025 in Japan, is you have an ultra-capitalist state that is a mirror image of what America wanted to be, but I would say hasn't quite got there yet. That's why Japan technology is incredible. That's why their cameras are the best. That's why their consoles are the best. Sorry, Microsoft. Sony and Nintendo and Sega all day, even Sega RIP from the console industry. It's why their watches, the digital watches, are the best, but not considered the finest because they're not Swiss or whatever. Their food is incredible. Their cuisine's incredible. Their people are either low-key depressed or incredibly satisfied. There's nothing in between. So what you have in Japan is a hyper-polarized society with generations that feel increasingly alienated away from each other. And one of the cultural and economic reasons why that's happened is because of the mid-20th century onwards and the way economically, socially, the structure of Japan has been a particular, quite conservative and right-wing thing. And now it's actually only in the millennial and Gen Z generations where Japanese people who've been born and raised there are thinking, hold on, we have access to the internet, and we know in other countries people don't have rampant sexism in the workplace, where the glass ceiling for women isn't that much lower than men, because there is a glass ceiling in the West still. Minorities and women are not oppressed the way that they are in working life in Japan. So there is a change coming, and I think it's a kind of social revolution that's encouraged by social media, by broadband, by Wi-Fi. I look at America, and I definitely look at the UK, and I think Western Europe and the entire North America is also seeing that happen. Politically, we've got what we've got since 2016 to now. It's been quite difficult for lots of people for obvious reasons we won't go into. But what's happening as a direct consequence of that is exactly what George Lucas has talked about in Star Wars all the time. All we have are cycles of creation and destruction. Where did he get that idea from? From Joseph Campbell and from the East. It's a fundamental belief in all the dharmas of the East, including the ones that Japan's culture and spirituality historically is based upon. Basically, there's good and bad. It's going to keep happening again and again. And we're going to have things go really bad before they get a bit better. And hopefully, right now, the pendulum's swinging back to things going really good. Even though right now it feels like things are quite bleak. So there's always hope, and the influence of Japan through anime on Star Wars and on Western culture has been massive. And we see that in the art that's been made, because art is the ultimate expression of the human soul. I know it might sound a bit cringeworthy, but it's a truth that I believe and I think we're all on board with. So we see what people are thinking at a particular time, a snapshot, a capsule, like here with Astro Boy, and it's a direct reflection of how people feel in the society at the time, individually and
I mean,
socially.
that's how I want to wrap it up. This is Astro Boy, and this premiered in the United States in September of 1963. And like Gio was saying, this is an art that has influenced all of the others. You can see directly that this influences, these characters are the same animation style as Speed Racer, which is 1967, and this has been on American television. And this happened only, less than 20 years after the massive destruction of Japan from the United States. And it's back, and it's influenced the culture all the way along. Like this anime influenced that anime and influenced that anime that is coming up to Star Wars Visions, which are completely anime. It's taking a Western story written by George Lucas and reimagining it in the Japanese lens. And that's what season 3 is back to. That's what season 1 was. Season 2 went out to the world to see what studios all over. And season 3 has come back to just those Japanese studios and what their different takes on different parts of the Star Wars Western story has been. But yet, for a Japanese even audience, and that's what makes it still the anime. And so all of these influences, and that's our entire title and thing. And next time we will get to the episodes of Visions in themselves, as we'll go ahead and we'll relay everything we've said in the last 2 and talk about those, because very much different episodes, different of Star Wars Vision season 3, have been more influenced, some more influenced by this, some more influenced by that studio, each one in their look, their feel, and their message. And that's what this whole thing has been doing, is trying to relate all of those influences into what is happening now today and in Star Wars Visions 3, which I promise we will actually get to. We've been promising that a while, but we'll get there. And
next episode's gonna be our year wrap up, not
okay. Never mind, and we'll get to it when we get to it. But next year will be our year wrap up, and then we can get to what is happening episode by episode in Star Wars Visions.
Yeah, we can bookmark and kind of roadblock different parts of the next episode. We'll have more structure. We might have new segments, maybe. We've been talking behind the scenes about that for a while. So definitely please do join us. And if you enjoyed the conversation in any degree and tuned in for even a nanosecond, thank you very much. The whole YouTube thingy about liking, sharing, subscribing.
Subscribe. If you want to get notified when we go live, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can check us out and notifications for, like, on the YouTube. You can find us on the Facebook page, which is, Star Wars Celebration LA 2027, powered by the Virtual Cantina Network, or just like us, subscribe to us right here on youtube.com/Virtual Cantina Network. So thanks everyone for joining us. And until next time, may the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you all.